Some things you see once and forget, others crawl into your brain, making a little nest and start whispering threats in Morse code. This was one of those. So I once borrowed a toenail from a knight, not his whole toe, just the nail. He said that it had magical properties passed down through 17 generations of, between you and I, incredibly average men named Grundlethorpe. Apparently, if you grind that into a soup, it can summon the spirit of the family horse. And why you'd want to do that? I don't know. Wait. The horse apparently died choking on a wheelbarrow handle, so anyway, I didn't grind it, I just tried to pawn it. No one in the village wants secondhand toenails, even if it allegedly has the power to summon hoofed ghosts, which makes no sense because how else are you supposed to summon the spirit of your dead horse? So I used it as a bookmark, and that's how I accidentally enchanted a copy of Ye Olde Spicy Romance, Volume 2, which is far better than 1, and I think we can all agree that's pretty rare for a sequel. The next morning, every villager within a 12-mile radius woke up deeply in love with Kevin the goat. Kevin handled it pretty poorly. He was at the sheriff's office all day, filing restraining orders in writing, which was weird because 1, no one taught him that, and 2, he doesn't have thumbs. So anyway, Sir Grundlethorpe found out and he tried to duel me at dawn. And I had to tell him that 1, it was 3:45 in the afternoon, and it's also incredibly tacky because it was Tuesday. He cried, Kevin watched, and we ended up just hashing it out at the bar later and had some cheesecake, and everything turned out mostly okay. Kevin still does have the occasional nightmare though, and that's sad. But the moral of the story is, don't borrow toenails from people with titles, and especially if they live with their mom, and they call their sword meat stick. I swear I wasn't looking for any trouble, but trouble showed up, barefoot, eating some waffles, and asking for my number. So there's this king, King Filbert the Moist. No one called him that officially, but the name stuck after he tried to invent underwater jousting and nearly drowned 3 lords and a pig. Not his pig, just a pig that wandered in. Honestly, the pig was the best part of the whole situation. Anyway, so I worked in his castle for exactly 3 days as a quote-unquote consulting wizard, which is what you call it when you're broke and your resume is mostly lies. On the 2nd day, he asked me to bless his bathwater so it would infuse him with the confidence of 1,000 stallions. Right. I used some dish soap and a spell I found carved into a bathroom stall. It didn't work, obviously, but it did give him the ability to smell colors for about 4 hours. He kept shouting, "Blue smells like courage," while trying to wrestle his throne. Weird. It could have been worse. No one really knows what goes on in the bathroom stalls around here. I mean, we do, but we pretend we don't, and I'm pretty fine with that. Well, on the 3rd day, he declared war on a nearby village for selling him emotionally manipulative cheese. His words, not mine. But maybe he's right. Narcissistic cheese could be a thing. Weird stuff kept happening, but when he slipped on a banana peel that moaned when he fell, by the time he hit the ground, I was halfway to the next town selling myself as a freelance porridge walker. Moral of the story, if your boss's nickname has the word moist anywhere within like 500 miles of it, it's time to get a new job. You ever wake up to find your left shoe full of crab salad and a legally binding contract taped to your elbow? No? Just me? Well, Captain Gumbo wasn't his real name. That's just what we started calling him after he tried to cook stew in a cannon. He said that it infused the flavor with vengeance. Mostly just killed Brian the cabin boy and gave us all gunpowder poisoning. Like, there's a lot to be said for gunpowder, but it sucks at seasoning. And that is a brand new sentence, I think. We weren't a crew so much as a collection of people who'd just been fired from other pirate ships. One guy got booted for stealing from himself. He kept finding treasure in places he'd just hidden it and throwing himself parties, and I really respected his confidence because you do not see it like that very often nowadays. Anyway, Captain Gumbo once told us that we were searching for the lost archipelago of infinite riches, and he was wrong because that was a typo, and it was actually the lost archipelago of incontinent riches. And we ended up stranded for 2 weeks on a series of very damp rocks that smelled like a music festival porta potty. We learned a lot of things about ourselves and how far a bidet and some poopery would go to improve crew morale. We tried mutiny, but Gumbo had already forgotten that he was the captain and never told anyone that he made me the captain. After an argument about our preferred toilet paper brands, he was a big Scott guy, and I swore and still do swear by Kirkland's signature. I only found out 3 days later when the crew voted to mutiny against me instead, and that's fine. He might have won the mutiny, but I'm sure he's just bitter that these cheeks are better taken care of. I left that night on a raft I made out of barrels tied together with pants that no one bothered wearing anymore, because what's the point of wearing them when all the seats are blown out anyway? So after all this, the moral of the story is Costco is the GOAT. All right. So yes, there are 3 towns I can't go back to because of what happened with that loaf of bread and box of Go-Gurt, but we are not talking about that right now. Let me tell you instead about the time I was a pirate. All right. I was briefly a pirate once upon a time. I wasn't very good at it. More like nautically adjacent, we'll say. So I hired on with Captain Blaggermug after I told him that I could read stars and talk to seagulls, which is technically true. I can talk to them. They just don't really talk back very much unless I have fries, and as for the star reading, I can also read them as long as it's kind of like a book with no words and all pictures. Anyway, our crew was cursed, not dramatic fire from the sky cursed, like the whole biblical thing, more like mildly inconvenienced forever. Every time we opened a treasure chest, it was full of identical spoons, hundreds of them, ornate, polished, somehow always uncomfortably warm, like humid. How can spoons be humid? I don't know. Just had to be there. They were humid. So our good captain kept insisting that we were always, quote unquote, close to greatness, which I am pretty sure he just meant heat stroke. We once spent 6 days trying to navigate around an island that turned out to be a pancake syrup stain on the map, and I tried to tell him, but he was busy licking a compass because he thought that it tasted like ambition. It didn't. Tasted kind of like copper and other bad ideas from Bad Ideas Past, Present, and Future, and to think it wasn't even Christmas. Eventually we made landfall on a beach that immediately smelled like marmalade and an outdoor fish market at noon, which should have been our first warning sign. We were immediately chased off by an angry mermaid cult, and they weren't magic or even that, that kind of mermaid. No, just aggressively organized and heavily moisturized, and you really shouldn't ask about that if you want to sleep tonight. So I managed to escape. I had to steal a coconut. I faked a limp, and I claimed diplomatic immunity, which ended up working out pretty well. In the confusion, I managed to get out. The moral of the story is that coconuts are often bigger than you think they are. I don't know where my therapist gets off saying I project chaos into otherwise stable environments, which is pretty rich coming from someone who keeps a battle axe and baby oil in their office. I don't get it. All right, so I'm going to tell you a story about this pharmacy I went to once, all right? There's this pharmacy on the edge of town where the cobblestones start to smell like beet juice and 3 a.m. bad decisions. It's run by this dude named Ergus, who insists he's not a wizard, just a licensed recreation enthusiast. I didn't ask any questions. I went in for something mild, maybe a charm or potion or something, just to make people stop talking to me maybe. He sold me this potion labeled Crush Magnet number 7. He said it's exactly what I need. There was a handwritten note underneath it that read, "Use responsibly, or don't. I don't care." Which wasn't too bad, at least it wasn't one of those 25-page disclaimers written in like Swahili legalese. So I drank it with tea, and I did a fine Earl Grey with cream and brown sugar, and hold on, I'm going to break the third wall for a second. Hey, how you doing? Brew it strong, okay? Like real strong, like bitter strong. And if you do some brown sugar, like dark brown sugar, and you do some half and half or heavy cream or something like that, it's like drinking caramel. It's wonderful. Thank me later. Okay, so back. Within 20 minutes, 5 villagers were proposing to me. One carved a tree with our initials together. My boots tried to cuddle me. And by sunset, a disgruntled milkmaid had burned a shrine to me out of cream cheese and threatened to fight God or whoever invented eyebrows. I don't even know what that means. I don't got eyebrows. Urgus refused to reverse it. Said it wasn't a side effect, it was a social opportunity, which is exactly what I was trying to avoid when I went there in the first place. So, anyway, I told him if one more lamppost winked at me, I was going to snap. I tried to wait it out, but by day 3, my reflection had developed romantic feelings for me and wouldn't stop mouthing the word soon. I've seen horror movies that start this way, and this was already kind of a personal horror movie, and I didn't want it to get any worse. So I just had to stop using mirrors. And soup spoons, and showering in the dark was no longer a bug, but a feature. Trust me, you don't want water falling in love with you. I know it seems a little counterintuitive, but you really don't, because it makes going to the bathroom an extreme sport. Who knew that toilets could give you PTSD? The town blacksmith proposed a poly tax bracket, and the mayor started writing me poetry. Somebody sent me a pigeon wrapped in lace. I just whispered compliments until I let it go. I ended up just having to fake my own death and just move 3 towns over. A bench from the old town still writes to me. So the moral of this story is never trust a man who labels things in permanent marker and winks when he hands them to you. You're not buying magic, you're buying a lifestyle adjustment that no one asked for. So the last time I trusted someone in a velvet hat, I ended up cursed, mildly radioactive, and briefly bilingual. I get cursed a lot. And, that reminds me. So it all started with bread. That's how a lot of these things start. I had insulted a witch's sourdough at the village bake-off. I didn't mean to, but I called it emotionally dry and textually confused. And she took that personally. Cursed me on the spot. Nothing too dramatic. No lightning bolts, no Latin. She just pointed at me and said, "You'll know when." And I did. The next morning, a goat was standing in my yard. No collar, no bell, not even looking particularly evil, which is something because of those goat eyes. But this goat just stood there. I don't know how I knew, but I knew that it was judging me. Staring, unblinking, fertilizing my lawn with goat pellets of disapproval. I tried to chase it off. I threw a rock. I caught the rock and then gave it back to me like it was filing evidence. And since then, it's followed me everywhere. To the market, to the bathroom, to a failed romantic outing where it mooed when I tried to compliment her outfit. Goats don't even moo. That was a choice. I tried offering it food. It stole mine instead. I tried to lock it out of the house. It picked the lock. I watched it do it with a carrot. That's where we were. That's where we were at. One night I woke up to find it sitting on my chest, chewing a page out of my journal like it disagreed with how I remembered an argument, leaving more pellets, kind of like a jacked up receipt. I had just washed the sheets that day too. The villagers say it's a spirit of vengeance. I think it's just petty. Either way, I stopped trying to get rid of it. We don't talk, but it knows. So I hired a priest. Not a particularly devout one. He was mostly in it for the travel and cool hat and robe, but he did have a bell and a book, and he smacked the goat on the nose with a sprig of parsley, holy parsley? Parsley, while chanting something that sounded like a chowder recipe. The goat didn't care, it chewed the bell. Then I tried a bard. Thought maybe music would calm it down, but the goat broke his lute in half and walked away with strings stuck between his teeth like floss. The bard cried, the goat winked. I was beginning to think I was like a side character in my own haunting. It's been 6 months now. I stopped dating. I no longer dream in silence. Sometimes I wake up and the goat has rearranged my furniture. Nothing major, just enough to let me know that it's still there, waiting for something, maybe just ready to critique my life choices from a more symmetrical angle. I don't know. So, the moral of the story is, if you disrespect magical bread, be prepared to share your life with an emotionally manipulative barnyard therapist. But, silver lining, at least it approves of my toilet paper choices, so there is that. So, to this day, no one's explained how that mariachi band got into the library. And frankly, I've stopped asking. But those maracas reminded me of Arby's, and Arby's always reminds me of the time. Okay, so check this one out. It started with hoof prints. Not fresh ones either, arranged ones. A spiraling pattern in the yard like someone summoned a demon and then was like, nah, halfway through and left to go get Arby's or something. I asked around, no one admitted anything, not Kevin, who stared at me harder than usual, which I didn't think was possible. And then Kevin showed up. Yes, Kevin. He'd been missing for weeks, came back with a limp and a glow stick necklace. Didn't explain, I didn't ask. That night, I heard the chanting. Goats don't usually chant. That's not the normal goat sound. And yet, behind the shed, lit by moonlight and inexplicable tiki torches, they gathered. I'm not sure how they managed to tie their robes, but I digress. There was Kevin, not Kevin, and a third goat who I'd never seen before, who radiated the same smug serenity of somebody who's been reincarnated too many times and had been just over it about a dozen lifetimes ago. I hid behind the shed, and there was a wheelbarrow, but after that night and his damn toenail, I'll never look at those again the same way. But look, I know how this works. I've seen the movies. If you interrupt a ritual, you either become part of it or end up in an arranged marriage with like a papaya. They were humming. Nope, they were vibrating. The kind of frequency that loosens fillings and probably calls cats from neighboring villages. I saw one goat pull out a scroll made out of graham crackers, and for a minute I thought, forbidden s'mores? But then the others nodded solemnly, one bleated in Latin. I don't even speak Latin, but my soul flinched. Then they turned and looked directly at me. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. Kevin blinked, not Kevin winked, and the third goat just raised a hoof like it was about to stick me with the check and, maybe place an order at like a very polite cafe or something like that. The next thing I know, I woke up in my kitchen wearing a ceremonial robe made of frozen tater tots, and there was a bowl of alphabet soup on the table. You were there, you saw nothing was spelled out in the soup. The problem is that I don't even have cans of alphabet soup in the house. I don't even have any spoons since the potion incident, and I haven't slept since Tuesday. My calendar says the Great Goat Eclipse, marked for next Thursday, but I don't remember writing that. And now my ceiling fan only spins counterclockwise every time I ask not Kevin about it. He just smirks, drops some goat pellets on my new carpet. I don't even know with any of that. But the moral of the story is that if you see three goats forming a circle at night, make sure you bring chocolate and marshmallows. Apparently they have weird potlucks at night, and if they can't make s'mores, bad things happen. Well, the scarecrow blinked first, which means that technically I won the duel. I just can't figure out how it can run so fast through that cornfield, and don't even get me started on the children. I'm definitely taking the long way next time. Oh, hi. So it disappeared like all socks do, like a ghost fart at dawn. You don't even realize until you're folding your laundry and then suddenly realize something's missing. That lone sock crying without tears because it doesn't have eyes all by itself. There's no fuss, no dramatic music, just 1 minute it's there, the next gone. I blame the dryer, like a fool, like a child. I didn't know. Not until it came back, 3 weeks later. It was sitting on my windowsill, just one sock, folded, crisp, smelling faintly of ozone and something else, like it had been to someone else's house and is now covered in some other place's other placeness. And that place had spaghetti that night for dinner. It was definitely my missing sock. But something was different. It started whispering, not with words, more like impressions, feelings, a cold certainty that the bench was still searching for where I'd gone. A sudden, unshakable knowledge that my favorite marmalade jar had indeed seen things, and that maybe Arby's does not in fact have all the meats. Scandal. I had no idea what was going on, but that sock was no longer right. It was just an entire grayscale of wrongs. I wore it once, just once. My foot still hasn't forgiven me. It twitches now when it rains. When secrets are near, when goats are aligned in prime number formations, it's hard to explain to people why I start limping near libraries. I tried to throw the sock away. It was already back in the drawer before the lid closed. I tried to burn it. It didn't catch fire. The match went out to the sounds of the Macarena. I tried to mail it to a monastery. The box came back with no return address and a note stapled to a sprig of rosemary. He knows. Now, I don't know who he is. The sock does. It won't tell me anything other than useless trivia and at the worst possible times. 3 a.m. I suddenly know that cat ears have 32 muscles. I'm at work, and I'm learning that New Jersey is the largest supplier of eggplants. I take it to trivia night and crickets, because why not? I stopped sleeping in Technicolor. My dreams have subtitles. I think the sock is waiting for something, maybe for me to put it on again, maybe for the other sock, maybe for me to finally start using fabric softener. I don't know. But the moral of the story is, if a sock goes missing, don't start looking, and if you do, bring some dryer sheets. The wallpaper was trying to argue that live, laugh, love decor is the pinnacle of human interior design. First, sir, this is a Wendy's. Second, like I'm going to take decorating tips from floral wallpaper with all the authority of a mid-century modern migraine. Did I ever tell you about the time I found out God has allergies? Urgus is not a wizard. He'll tell you that up front, usually while grinding moon rocks into tea with a pestle that charitably looks like a fossilized rind of Parmesan. No, Urgus is a licensed recreation enthusiast, which is code for he sells magic that he probably found in a ditch or behind a dumpster. I wanted for something mild, something non-flammable, something that wouldn't make my reflection fall in love with me again. He said, "Good news, I got just the thing." He handed me a glowing vial labeled, "Blessing, bottled, do not shake." There was a little note tucked under it that read, "Highly volatile, mildly forgiving, don't use with a full bladder." I asked him what was in it. He said, "It's a sneeze. From a divine being. Probably." The vial smelled like sauerkraut and pine sol when I got it, so I knew it had to be legit. Well, how can I say no? Naturally, I opened it. It didn't explode, it exhaled. That sound is weird. It's like the sound of a choir giving up or British soccer fans when their star player trips on their shoelaces. Immediately, my nose twitched. My eyes watered. I hiccuped and a bunch of silly string shot out of my ears. My shadow started clapping. I had one thought. This sneeze is alive. And then the blessing kicked in. My bread turned to coffee cake. You know, the one with that warm, sugar, crispy crust? Hell yeah. My socks paired themselves. My mother-in-law nodded in approval. I'm not even married. Not Kevin even gave me a thumbs up. For 12 hours, I was a demigod of convenience. Every toilet paper roll I touched was full. Every jar opened on the first try. There was no line at the drive-thru. Any drive-thru. Life was pretty good. But then it changed. Then came the cough. Then the sweat. Then the itching. It was worse than coming back from that knitting party I went to at the old folks' home. I sneezed once. A nearby squirrel turned into an insurance salesman and tried to offer me an extended warranty on my car. And when I didn't want to talk about that, it tried to talk to me about my Coinbase account. I sneezed again. My house sang a hymn in reverse Latin and then politely turned into generic store-brand mac and cheese. Oh, I knew it was store-brand. That cheese powder never mixes right. Urgus called it the tail end of magic. He said that it had to burn itself out, and then he got into an Uber and left me standing there. I don't know why I keep buying stuff from this guy. Moral of the story, next time you go to a knitting party, make sure to bring protection. Oh, you gotta go? Well, fine then. But before you go, let me tell you why I don't trust vending machines anymore. It sat there for years, dusty, forgotten, wedged between the pharmacy and Kevin's questionable yoga studio. No one knew where it came from, no one claimed to stock it, it hummed, it blinked, it glared, and one day it spoke. I only wanted a snack. That's it. One bag of salty and ethically ambiguous cheese puffs to soak up the sour stomach I'd been working on since last night. I dropped my money in. It's batted back with force. A lot of force, like leaving dent in the wall force. And then the screen lit up with one word. Try again. So I did. I was a bit offended because of the whole all caps thing, but maybe he doesn't know how to speak in lowercase. Coin, spit, coin, swallowed. Nothing dispensed. The machine vibrated slightly and displayed, "You know what you did." I don't. I still don't. Bold of you to assume that I would when I can't even remember to stop buying potions from Urgus. The goat was watching. Of course he was. Not Kevin was across the street eating a traffic cone. I yelled at the machine. It gave me a Werther's Original and a coupon for a new hat. I didn't get my cheese puffs, but I do like hard candies, so that's okay. I wonder what sort of hat I should get. Huh. That night, I dreamed of metal, gears grinding teeth, an endless loop of exact change and microphone feedback. I woke up and there was a receipt taped to my forehead that said transaction declined. Not Kevin denied having anything to do with it. And I believed him. Something in those demonic goat eyes told me that though he was many things, he wasn't a liar. I tried to avoid it after that. Walked the long way around, carried exact change. Like a coward, I know. Still, it found me. I open up my cupboard and there'd be an empty bag of cheese puffs just sitting there. Sometimes there'd even be a Werther's Original wrapper sitting inside, like a tease. It knew what I wanted, but it refused. My money was no good to it. I did my best to ignore it and move on with my life, but then it escalated. My toaster wouldn't work if the vending machine was mad. My doorbell started charging admission. The shower would only turn on if I recited vending machine serial numbers in alphabetical order. I tried apologizing. The machine dispensed 3 fortune cookies, all of them blank. I snapped. I kicked it. I printed out my browsing history. I poured holy water on it. It turned it into Baja Blast. I summoned Urgus. He tried to sell the machine a potion. It rejected him with a small explosion and a printed note that just said, "L Wizard." Petty. Finally, I offered it everything: my change, my snacks, my last functioning toothbrush. The lights blinked, the machine whirred, the air grew still, and then slowly it dispensed a single plastic Easter egg, fluorescent orange, with my name, and a timestamp 3 days into the future. The egg sits on my mantle. Not Kevin bows to it. Kevin won't look at it. I don't know what's in it. I kind of don't want to know. But I'd be lying if part of me didn't hope it was some more hard candy. So the moral of the story is always use a card when dealing with vending machines. If you don't, you might end up with a pocket full of old people candy. Hey, this is John, creator of Rude Chicken. And that wraps up season 1 of Rude Chicken Tales from the Dumpster Fire. Thank you so much for listening. And I really hope you've enjoyed the ride so far. This series, like most of, Root Chicken's content, has been an absolute blast to make. If you've laughed, cringed, winced, or questioned reality at least once, do me a favor and hit like, subscribe, or share it with somebody weird who might get a kick out of it. There's a lot more to come. Stay tuned. Thanks again.